Chapter 286. That kid, is he the Brian you were talking about? Ames, one of the three heavyweights of the Dark Mantle, looked at Han Shuo from the garden house with interest and spoke elegantly. That's him. He has indeed done many great things recently, and his strength seems to be unfathomable. It's just that I haven't truly seen him yet. This is a good opportunity to see his true strength. Candide said to Ames with a gloomy face. Ames looked to be in his 30s and was wearing a well-tailored white robe. There were no decorations on the robe, making it look clean and simple. It complemented his extraordinary handsome appearance and gave him an attractive and refined charm. However, for the nobles of the Lancelot Empire, the handsome and elegant Ames who often wore a faint smile was a terrifying character like the god of death. Once a noble was targeted by Ames, there was basically no possibility of escape. The lightest punishment was confiscation of their property and imprisonment, while the heaviest punishment was immediate execution. Among the three heavyweights, Cecilia was usually active abroad, Candide was in charge of gathering intelligence and investigating assassins of the Empire, and Ames was in charge of monitoring and suppressing high officials and nobles. The three of them had a clear division of labor and coordinated very well. However, Candide and Cecilia usually didn't show themselves in front of the public and posed no threat to some of the nobles of the Empire. Only Ames was the most familiar and also the most feared. There wasn't a single noble who wasn't afraid of him. You should be very clear about Leah Kane's strength. In addition, Leah Kane is related to First Prince Charles. If this kid can't beat Leah Kane, I'm afraid it will be difficult for him to leave the garden house alive. Ames narrowed his slender eyes and looked at Han Shuo, who was standing proudly in the garden house as he spoke to Candide. Heh, that's hard to say. Ferguson, who is a light grand magus like you, also died in his hands. As far as I know, Ferguson's fame isn't any lower than Leah Kane's. If he can kill a light grand magus, then he might be able to kill Leah Kane as well. Although Candide wasn't optimistic about Han Shuo had been promoted by him. Candide couldn't lose face in front of Ames. Ames smiled elegantly and didn't say much. He only nodded slightly and leisurely sat down on a stone bench on the high platform. He took out an exquisite tea set and began to drink by himself. Inside the garden house, Han Shuo was a bit worried. Through the three demons spying, Han Shuo discovered that Emily, Phoebe, and Fanny were all outside the garden house. Although the three women weren't in the same direction, Han Shuo knew that they would definitely come looking for him once he left the garden house. Han Shuo wasn't worried about Emily because she was open-minded when it came to relationships. Although she might have some grudges in her heart, at least she wouldn't fly into a rage. However, Phoebe and Fanny didn't know about Han Shuo's situation. Once the two women saw each other, a storm would be inevitable. While Han Shuo was still worrying about relationships, mad great swordsman Leah Kane walked out from the center of the garden house. Leah Kane carried a broadsword and walked out with a cold expression. His cruel eyes swept over Han Shuo and he snorted, "Brat, you're that Brian, right?" "That's me. I think you already know about the situation, so there's no need for us to talk nonsense. Let's fight on this spacious lawn and settle this storm, shall we?" As soon as Leah Kane walked out of the room, Han Shuo immediately cast aside his emotional worries and focused all of his attention on Leah Kane, replying leisurely. "All right, I'll teach you a good lesson." Leah Kane laughed sinisterly and then looked at the crowd outside the garden house. He suddenly said, "If you don't mind, can you let the people outside come in and watch the fight?" Frowning, Han Shuo thought for a moment and said, "I don't mind. It's just that there are too many people outside. If they all come in, I'm afraid it won't be appropriate." "Then, there shouldn't be a problem if only the nobles are allowed in." Leah Kane had listened to Charles's instructions beforehand. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made this suggestion. Han Shuo was worried that if the three women gathered together and got too close to him, there would be a disturbance that he didn't want to see. That was why he was a bit apprehensive. When Leah Kane said this, Han Shuo remembered that Fanny and Phoebe didn't have noble titles. He nodded and said, "Then do as you wish." Seeing Han Shuo nod in agreement, Leah Kane waved his hand at the guard in the distance. The guards seemed to have known Lia Kane's intentions and shouted from outside, "Those with noble titles in the Lancelot Empire can come in and watch. Other commoners are not allowed inside." With this, the nobles who were loitering outside walked in arrogantly and gracefully. The commoners around them didn't say anything. On the profound continent, the nobles had certain privileges. Commoners were well aware of this and had long since gotten used to it. Therefore, they weren't surprised. One by one, the nobles entered the garden house with their attendants. Among them, Phoebe and Lawrence mixed together and also took the opportunity to enter the garden house. As soon as Phoebe entered the garden house, she suddenly felt someone spying on her. She turned her head and saw that it was an astonished Emily. Emily was wearing a long purple dress. Her delicate face was as white as jade. She was incomparably beautiful among old Han's group. She carried an awe-inspiring and inviolable nobility. She didn't have any of the melancholy that a widow should have. She was unbelievably dazzling. Damn that Brian. This Emily must have also obtained a miraculous pill. Could he be related to Emily? With just a glance, Phoebe knew that it was the effect of the rebirth pill. Especially when Emily looked at Phoebe with a gaze full of astonishment. The two women immediately understood what was going on with just a glance. "Brian, you'll definitely win." Lawrence was very optimistic as he cheered for Han Shuo from afar. "He wants to win with his abilities? Dream on." First Prince Charles said disdainfully from not too far away from Lawrence. The group of nobles following behind him immediately chimed in and started sucking up to the prince. Each and every one of them did their utmost to recite the reasons why Han Shuo would surely lose, wanting to win Charles's favor. There was a lawn the size of a football field in the center of the garden house. Han Shuo and Lia Kane were currently at the center of the lawn, surrounded by nobles of the Lancelot Empire. These nobles all had expert guards beside them. In addition, they were quite a distance away from Han Shuo and Lia Kane, so they weren't worried about their own safety. The grave and stern Lia Kane didn't pay too much attention to Han Shuo. When he saw the nobles enter one after another, he cast his gaze at Charles. Charles, who was chatting cheerfully and wittily, saw Lia Kane look at him. He nodded slightly, indicating that Lia Kane could make his move. Lia Kane, who was carrying a broadsword, finally turned his gaze back to Han Shuo. He said coldly, "Brat, are you ready to die?" Han Shuo took a deep breath and expelled all distracting thoughts from his mind. Han Shuo's face instantly became cold and merciless. His voice was also cold and arrogant. "Mr. Lia Kane, before the battle, I have to remind you that apart from martial arts, I'm also an archmage necromancer. I hope you'll be careful." "You're just a useless archmage necromancer. You're wasting your energy on this kind of useless magic. I can already imagine how high your attainments in martial arts are. I really don't know what kind of trash that great swordmaster you killed was. He couldn't even win against a guy like you who didn't focus on martial arts. It seems that your Lancelot Empire really doesn't have any true experts." Lia Kane was incomparably arrogant. He had offended all the surrounding nobles with just this one sentence. Even the nobles who had bet on him to win all revealed angry expressions. "Idiot, even if you win, don't even think about establishing a foothold in the Lancelot Empire. No wonder you wanted to escape from the Brute Merchant Alliance. With this kind of temper, if you didn't have some strength, you would have been killed long ago." First Prince Charles looked at the arrogant Lia Kane and cursed in his heart. He had already made up his mind that even if Lia Kane killed Han Shuo this time, he absolutely couldn't expose his relationship with Lia Kane. This was to avoid affecting the noble's opinion of him because of Lia Kane. "Mr. Lia Kane, I hope you won't disappoint me." With a thought, the Demon's Lair edge fell into Han Shuo's right hand from his sleeve. The 2-foot-long Demon's Lair edge was as sharp as a needle. The blade was an abnormal dark brown color. It didn't look very conspicuous without magical yuan. "Kid, since you dared to come to my place, you should have already made preparations. Today, I'll let you know the strength of your seniors. Don't think that you're invincible just because you've won against a few pieces of trash." Lia Kane snorted coldly and pointed the broadsword in his hand at Han Shuo, speaking arrogantly. Han Shuo didn't respond to Lia Kane. With a callous expression, he raised the demon's lair edge and directly flew towards Lia Kane. His body drew several afterimages due to his high speed. He was so fast that it was hard to tell which was which. Chapter 287. Although Lia Kane's words were disdainful, when Han Shuo actually made his move, he immediately focused all of his attention to deal with it. He raised the broadsword in his hand and snorted coldly. A silver sword curtain suddenly opened in front of him. Lia Kane had already advanced to the realm of Great Swordmaster many years ago. He had immersed himself in this realm for a long time, challenging many experts in the Brute Merchant Alliance and earning the title of Mad Great Swordmaster. If he hadn't offended the lightning sacred Magus Reynold Dyla of the Brute Merchant Alliance, Lia Kane wouldn't have come to the Lancelot Empire. Great Swordmaster Lia Kane opened the silver sword curtain and completely enveloped the area in front of him. Han Shuo, who was flying over, could feel the enormous sword aura contained within the sword curtain. The invincible demon's lair edge in his hand shot out a black light after injecting demonic yuan into it, directly piercing towards the silver sword curtain. When the demon's lair edge shot out this attack, the black light that burst out was dark and gloomy. It carried an astonishing killing intent as it suddenly bombarded the sword screen that Lia Kane had created. Only a few explosive sounds could be heard as the silver sword screen and the black light intertwined. The silver light and black light scattered like specks of starlight. "Oh!" Lia Kane exclaimed softly and abruptly took a step back. He looked at Han Shuo in astonishment and said, "Good kid, your martial technique is indeed a bit strange. It's actually not fighting aura." The silver sword curtain disappeared into thin air under the black light of the demon's lair edge. However, when the silver sword curtain and the demon's lair edge collided, an enormous force flowed through the demon's lair edge and directly into Han Shuo's arm. Han Shuo's arm was shaken to the point of numbness. Han Shuo didn't rush to attack again. He coldly stared at Lia Kane, not daring to relax at all. After this attack, Han Shuo already knew that Lia Kane was indeed much stronger than the great swordmaster he had killed last time. They were both great swordmasters, but Lia Kane had immersed himself in this realm for many years. His attainments were indeed extraordinary. This Brian does have some strength. On the balcony opposite the garden house, Amis looked at Candide in astonishment and exclaimed softly. Candide's eyes sparkled as he looked at Brian with great interest. He replied, "This is also the first time I've seen him fight." He didn't have any fighting aura, but he was actually able to break through Lia Kane's sword curtain condensed from fighting aura. This is indeed strange. It looks like he's hiding a lot of secrets. The nobles around the lawn cried out in surprise when they saw Han Shuo cut through Lia Kane's sword curtain with a single stroke. Lawrence, Phoebe, and the others revealed joyful expressions. "This kid isn't bad. He saved us last time at Evie's house, so we owe him a favor. I hope he won't be harmed by Lia Kane." Old Han, who was beside Emily, chuckled as he looked at Han Shuo and spoke to Emily. "Father, I think this Brian might be able to win," Emily said with a light smile. She understood that Han Shuo's strength wasn't just limited to this. Just Han Shuo's ability to fly was already a great advantage. This wasn't something Lia Kane could do. I hope so." Old Han laughed heartily. Lia Kane snorted coldly amidst the clamor of the crowd. "You do have some strength, but it's a pity that you shouldn't have challenged me." As soon as he finished speaking, Lia Kane raised his broadsword and walked towards Han Shuo. His speed wasn't fast, and every step he took was very heavy. The two crisscrossing scars on his neck looked very sinister, and his eyes were filled with a crazy desire to fight. Lia Kane walked over step by step, his aura becoming stronger and stronger. The broadsword in his hand shone with a brilliant silver light, emitting a dazzling radiance under the sunlight. The silver fighting aura and the broadsword fused together and converged into a gorgeous rainbow. It slashed down towards Han Shuo from a distance of 10 meters. This silver rainbow was incomparably fast, as if it had crossed 10 meters. It appeared in front of Han Shuo in an instant. The enormous power contained within it was so strong that even some of the spectating nobles could clearly feel it. Han Shuo stood there like a fool. He didn't seem to be able to react for a moment under the attack of the silver rainbow. The crowd watched helplessly as Han Shuo was slashed down by the silver rainbow. He didn't seem to know how to dodge at all. "Hurry and run." Many of the spectators who were worried about Han Shuo all screamed out to warn him. Unfortunately, the speed of their voices was obviously slower than Lia Kane's silver rainbow. As soon as these people's warnings came out, a terrifying explosion came from the area where Han Shuo had been standing. The area where Han Shuo had been standing had directly split open into a 15-meter-long ravine. The ravine was so deep that it looked like it had been cut into a piece of tofu. Silver fighting aura lingered in the ravine and didn't dissipate. The enormous power continued to explode on both sides of the huge ravine, producing rumbling sounds. When the terrifying explosion stopped, the ravine that had been split open became even bigger. All the weeds were covered by the silver fighting aura and turned into green sawdust. What a terrifying attack. Poor challenger, he's definitely done for. Sigh, he's still a bit young after all. It's inevitable that he can't withstand a single blow from such an expert who's been famous for so many years. Let's go. That young man must have died in the ravine. There's nothing left to see. Oh, such a handsome man was actually killed by that ugly monster. Damn enemy nations, people. All sorts of unfavorable comments about Han Shuo came from the mouths of the spectators. They watched as Han Shuo didn't make any movements to dodge Lia Kane's sword. They naturally assumed that Han Shuo had already died in the ravine. Suddenly, a loud shout sounded, "Oh my God, look up in the sky." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone raised their heads in unison. They saw Han Shuo proudly standing high in the sky with the Demon's Lair edge in hand, coldly looking down at Lia Kane. He wasn't injured at all. How is this possible? Even Lia Kane himself couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He stared at the sky with some disbelief. If a swordsman wanted to stand in the sky, they had to reach the realm of Sword God in order to rely on fighting aura to travel in the sky. Although mages could use the levitation spell to stand in the air at the Archmage realm, the levitation spell still couldn't be that fast, nor could it be that nimble. Although Han Shuo was an Archmage necromancer, he couldn't use the slow levitation spell to dodge the swift and violent sword attack. Therefore, Lia Kane couldn't help but be shocked when he saw Han Shuo standing enscathed in the sky. Amies, can you sense the gathering of magical elements on his body? Why can't I sense it at all? Candide, who was on the high platform, looked at Han Shuo who was standing proudly in the sky and shouted in amazement. Shaking his head, the usually calm and collected Amies also cried out in surprise, "Strange, very strange. He's not using any magical fighting aura, but he's actually able to stand so miraculously in the sky. What's going on?" It looks like it must have something to do with the miraculous martial arts technique he practices. Amies, Brian's martial arts technique is very miraculous. If the Lancelot Empire's military can master it and use it to fly at high speeds, the strength of our Lancelot Empire's army will increase many times over. Candide's heart was moved as he immediately shouted, "Be careful. If Lia Kane dares to kill, we must stop him even if it means breaking the rules. This Brian is indeed miraculous. He's too useful to our Lancelot Empire. We absolutely cannot let him die." Amies shouted resolutely. He had already decided to protect Han Shuo at all costs. "Let's do it. After this matter, I believe that your majesty will know what to do." Candide immediately agreed. His sinister eyes focused on Lia Kane's body. The dark element around his body intensified as he prepared to make a move at any time, regardless of his status. Amidst the lush foliage of a towering tree, the super assassin Balins that Han Shuo and Lawrence had previously met in the northern rose garden was crouching amidst the leaves and gazing at the sky. His eyes were wide open as he muttered to himself, "This is too miraculous. He's actually using a martial arts technique to stand proudly in the sky. This Brian seems to be hiding other secrets besides his extraordinary attainments in killing aura. Master really made the right choice to let me come this time. Kid, don't think that you're so great just because you're a mage. Come down if you have the guts. Lia Kane bellowed as he looked up at Han Shuo in the sky. Although he was a great swordmaster, he still couldn't fly in the sky. Facing Han Shuo, he could only stare at him helplessly. As you wish. Han Shuo let out a long laugh in the sky and flew down like a meteor. The demon's lair edge in his hand shot out a 2-meter-long purplish-red demonic light. A thick murderous aura spread in all directions with Han Shuo as the center. All the onlookers felt their hearts palpitate and couldn't help but step back a bit. Each and every one of them looked at the descending Han Shuo with shock. Chapter 288. Good kid. Lia Kane clearly felt this enormous killing intent. His crazed eyes were filled with battle excitement as silver fighting aura continuously condensed on the broadsword in his hand. He didn't wait for Han Shuo to land on the ground before another silver rainbow shot out, aiming straight for Han Shuo, who was slashing at his head. Han Shuo's eyes turned scarlet red as killing intent gathered around his body. His expression was sinister and terrifying, and a sinister, mysterious, and terrifying aura shrouded Lia Kane's head along with the bloody mist. The 2-meter-long purplish-red demonic light drifted downwards in a bewitching manner like a beautiful large feather drifting in the wind. A loud clang sounded as the purplish-red demonic light descended and intertwined with Lia Kane's silver rainbow. It was as if there were beautiful fireworks exploding in the air. Silver, deep red, and purple lights continuously shot out. Waves of metallic clashing sounds continuously came from the beautiful explosions. Lia Kane, who was standing on the ground, had already been smashed into the grass by the enormous force as the explosions continued to ring in his ears. The soil had sunk up to his knees, and a strange power of alternating heat and cold suddenly enveloped him. The strange power was like an all-pervasive ghost that poured straight into his body. Lia Kane suddenly shivered as he felt his body turn stiff and cold. Just as he was feeling aghast, another wave of scorching heat erupted from his body like a volcano. The two auras of cold and heat intertwined within his body, giving Lia Kane an incomparably wonderful and painful feeling. Lia Kane let out a crazed howl and screamed at the sky like a madman. He tore off the clothes on the upper half of his body, revealing a body of strong muscles. Streaks of silver light were clearly twisting on his naked body, and there were even streaks of red and purple light reflecting off of them. It was a very strange sight. "I'm going to tear you apart," Lia Kane roared. Specks of silver light gathered on the broadsword in his hand as he brandished it towards the cold, attacking Han Shuo. Suddenly, the light on the broadsword in Lia Kane's hand abruptly receded. All of the silver fighting aura had disappeared, and the bright and clean broadsword didn't reflect any luster under the sunlight. It looked incomparably strange. Han Shuo, who had exchanged a blow with Lia Kane, understood that Lia Kane's strength was indeed extraordinary. Han Shuo, who was in the bloodthirsty realm, hadn't been able to gain the upper hand even with his full strength. If it wasn't for the mystical glacial spellfire's two extreme cold and heat attributes, Lia Kane wouldn't have been in such a difficult situation. Han Shuo's hands were numb as he flew down. An enormous amount of magical yuan surged into the demon's lair edge. Han Shuo, who had been accumulating energy to deal another heavy blow to Elijah Kane, suddenly discovered that the radiance of the broadsword had completely disappeared. He instinctively felt a sense of danger. Han Shuo's extraordinary perception once again displayed its keen effect. He was flying down to attack Lia Kane when he immediately connected with the three Yin demons. When the broadsword in Lia Kane's hand trembled, Han Shuo's body suddenly split into four and fell in four different directions. At this moment, the broadsword that had completely lost its luster suddenly burst out with a blinding light. Fine, needle-like rays of cold light shot towards the sky like rain. Those needle-like rays of cold light covered an area of 5 meters. Not only were they densely packed, but they were also filled with terrifying penetrative power. They pierced into the sky in the blink of an eye and disappeared. The body formed by the Yin demon took the place of the original body and was completely penetrated by the cold light. The incorporeal and formless Yin demon was also invaded by a strange power when the cold light pierced through the sky. Because the dense fighting aura had been condensed to an extremely small degree, it actually possessed a powerful destructive power against the Yin demon. This caused one of Han Shua's Yin demons to be pierced full of holes and its aura to become extremely weak. What a terrifying attack! Han Shua was shocked. He was absolutely horrified when he landed on the ground. Lia Kane was indeed very frightening. He was actually able to condense fighting aura to such a small and dense degree. The fighting aura had been condensed to the size of needles, but the power and destructive power contained within had actually increased by 100 times. Even the almost incorporeal Yin demon was injured by this kind of sharp light. Han Shua believed that if he hadn't reacted in time and decisively used fulgurating shadows, his physical body would definitely have been destroyed. While Han Shua was endlessly shocked by Lia Kane, as the attacker, was even more incredulous. He never thought that Han Shua would be able to dodge his attack. When Han Shua, who had been split into 4, landed on the ground, the 3 Yin demons' bodies slowly faded, like reflections in water that had a stone thrown into them. They twisted and swayed for a moment before disappearing, leaving only Han Shua standing behind Lia Kane. Too strong. Wow, what was that just now? A rain of swords, too gorgeous. I didn't think that this ugly guy could have such a beautiful attack. This Brian is the real deal. If my eyes weren't playing tricks on me, I would have seen 4 Brians just now. Oh my god, too amazing. You're not playing tricks on you. I also saw 4 Brians. What kind of martial technique is that? It's too powerful. After a moment of silence, the surroundings suddenly burst into a fierce clamor. All the nobles and their guards who had come to watch the fight started discussing in surprise. Their faces were filled with excitement and astonishment. They were shocked by this unprecedentedly exciting fight. What's going on? On the high platform, Candide had an expression of disbelief as he looked at Lia Kane and Han Shua who were standing in the distance. That Lia Kane is really terrifying. According to our Dark Mantle's information, the experts he's fought in recent years have only used a silver rainbow-like sword light to directly defeat his opponents with his superior fighting aura. However, it seems like Lia Kane's true ultimate move should be that fine and dense rain of cold light that he just released. I could feel the terrifying attack power contained within. I didn't think that this Lia Kane, who looks so crude and brainless, would actually be hiding such a sinister and meticulous ultimate move. What a terrifying person! Amis exclaimed. After a pause, Amis excitedly shouted, Candide, however, this Brian of yours is even more amazing. Facing that kind of attack that was almost impossible to dodge, he actually used that miraculous martial technique to split into 4 people and successfully escape. What an amazing kid! Of course, otherwise why would I put in so much effort for him? Candide, who was originally secretly amazed, immediately said in a gloomy and proud voice after hearing Ami's words. The surrounding people were discussing spiritedly and clamoring noises rose and fell. It seemed like the excited spectators wouldn't stop until the 2 of them made their move. After experiencing a fierce battle, Lia Kane and Han Shua both had a clear understanding of each other's strength. Han Shua, who was originally full of confidence, began to treat Han Shua seriously. Lia Kane, who was originally disdainful of Han Shua, also put away his arrogance and treated Han Shua as the most terrifying enemy in his life. At this moment, the 2 of them were 15 meters apart, facing each other with equal harshness. Lia Kane once again stood on flat ground, lightly panting as he glared at Han Shua. The 2 of them just stared at each other without saying a word. After 10 breaths, Han Shua grinned and said, Lia Kane, you will die today without a doubt. Your attack just now was indeed incomparably powerful, but it's a pity that it requires a certain amount of time to condense and consumes a lot of fighting aura, right? Lia Kane immediately turned pale with fright when he heard these words. It seemed that Han Shua had clearly pointed out the weakness of that move. At this moment, Han Shua dashed towards Lia Kane like a bolt of lightning. The demon's lair edge was a step ahead of him and bit towards Lia Kane like a spirit snake with its fangs bared. Once Lia Kane's great sword blocked the demon's lair edge, the demon's lair edge would change direction and continue attacking him from the other side. Han Shuo didn't attack Lia Kane like the demon's lair edge did. Instead, he flew into the sky once again and took out a white bone staff unhurriedly, starting to chant a necromancy incantation. When the canopy of necromancy covered the sun, 2 evil knights led a group of dark creatures onto the lawn, surrounding Lia Kane heavily. 2 evil knights, 5 hate knights, 20 zombies, 70 skeletal warriors, and 2 teams of 30 gargoyles continuously appeared with Han Shuo's incantations. Lia Kane, who was entangled by the demon's lair edge, couldn't do anything. He could only watch as the enormous dark creatures drowned him. Lia Kane is finished, Amis said elegantly and smiled at Candide. Let's go, we'll go see His Majesty together. This Brian's value will definitely make His Majesty make the right decision. Hee, that kid Lawrence's luck isn't bad. Perhaps we should get closer to him. You're right. Candide nodded in agreement and floated into the sky with Amis, heading towards the palace from the other side. The two hadn't even completely left when Lia Kane's miserable howls rang out continuously and spread throughout the entire garden house. Lia Kane's ankle was grabbed by the Earth elite zombie hidden in the ground. He was then ambushed by an unremarkable 7-winged little skull and was seriously injured. Afterwards, he was trampled to death by 2 evil knights charging towards him. Behind him, more than 100 dark creatures swarmed over and tore Lia Kane to pieces. Chapter 289. Lia Kane's fate was sealed the moment the 100 or so dark creatures appeared. After all, Lia Kane had already used up a lot of fighting aura in his battle with Han Shuo. That subtle cold light attack in particular had consumed a lot of fighting aura. Although Han Shuo, who had the mental strength of a Grand Magus, couldn't release Grand Magus necromancy magic, his enormous mental strength was enough for Han Shuo to summon a large number of dark creatures. Especially among these dark creatures, there were the ridiculously strong Little Skull, Earth Elite Zombie, and Wood Elite Zombie. These 3 strange dark creatures were mixed in with the enormous army of necromancers. Their surprise attacks weren't something an ordinary person could defend against. Lia Kane had to deal with the Demon's Lair Edge's all-pervasive attacks while facing the 2 evil knights who were famous for their tyrannical strength. Naturally, he had to divert most of his attention. In this way, the 3 strange creatures' special attack method was naturally effective. Lia Kane was instantly injured by Little Skull's sneak attack and then trampled to death by the evil knights. More than 100 dark creatures submerged Lia Kane in an instant. The surrounding nobles and attendants were blocked by the dark creatures and couldn't clearly see what was happening. They could only hear Lia Kane's mournful screams. When Lia Kane's mournful screams gradually subsided, Han Shuo, who was standing proudly in the air, slowly chanted an incantation and sent all the summoned creatures back to the other dimension. When the dark creatures had dispersed, there wasn't even bone residue left in the center of the lawn, apart from blood. Everyone understood that Lia Kane was done for. He must have been torn apart and eaten by the dark creatures. The large amount of undried blood on the ground was proof of this fact. He's done for. Lia Kane is dead, he should be dead. Oh, how is this possible? He was killed so quickly. The onlookers looked at Han Shuo, who was standing proudly in the air, and then looked at the bloodstains on the lawn. They all knew that the battle was over. Han Shuo had successfully killed the mad great swordmaster of the Brute Merchant Alliance, Lia Kane. Han Shuo had won this battle fair and square. He had displayed a miraculous martial skill from start to finish. In the end, he had used the most effective human wave tactic used by necromancers to drown a great swordmaster. This battle could be called a classic no matter how one looked at it. Especially Lia Kane's cold drizzle attack and Han Shuo's miraculous martial skill of splitting himself into 4. They were deeply imprinted in their memories. Amidst the hubbub of discussion below, Han Shuo stood proudly in the air, whistling towards the sky as he soared into the distance. He elegantly and confidently disappeared into a black dot until no one could see a trace of him anymore. Not only did the onlookers in the garden house know of Han Shuo's great victory, Even the commoners on the streets around the garden house knew that Han Shuo had won after seeing Han Shuo fly away. They all cheered loudly, as if they were celebrating a festival. First, Prince Charles's face was frighteningly gloomy. No matter how he guessed, he never thought that Leah Kane would lose. This was simply unrealistic for him. The great merchant Cameron's expression was even more unsightly than Charles's. Standing behind Charles, Cameron's face was ashen. His gaze was lifeless as he stared blankly, completely at a loss as to what to do. As the operator behind the scenes of this wagered fight, Cameron had also bet his hard-earned capital. Just Fanny's Buzzed Merchant Guild alone would cost Cameron his hard-earned capital. In contrast to him was Phoebe. The originally cold and arrogant Phoebe's face was now filled with uncontrollable excitement. Her small cherry mouth couldn't help but mutter to herself, "I'm rich, I'm rich." Haha, Brian, oh Brian, you really didn't disappoint me. Lawrence looked at Charles's gloomy expression and felt that he had never felt so carefree before. He laughed heartily and swaggered away from Charles and Cameron with Phoebe. "Let's go, father." Although Emily already knew that this would happen as the woman behind Han Shuo, she still felt endlessly honored when she saw Han Shuo display his invincible might. The corners of her mouth curved into a happy arc as she said to old Han with a smile, "Inconceivable, an inconceivable kid, he." Old Han exclaimed in admiration as he walked out of the garden house with Emily. One by one, the officials and nobles walked out of the garden house. The details of Han Shuo's great victory over Leah Kane were quickly spread. For a time, the entire Asen city was talking about his elegant demeanor. Who knew how many noble ladies secretly regarded Han Shuo as an object of admiration? Who knew how many nobles wanted to recruit Han Shuo? Asen City, inside the imperial palace. Amis and Candide, who had left earlier, were in the same room as His Majesty the King of Lancelot Empire. Candide and Amis were softly narrating the course of events to the king. After a long while, King Uhtred of Lancelot Empire suddenly shouted in a carefree manner, "Good, well done. I heard yesterday that he found the manufacturing blueprints. Today, he killed Leah Kane of the Brute Merchant Alliance. This kid is indeed worthy of my capital." "Your Majesty, that's not all. Brian has grasped a mystical martial technique that is even more frightening. Not only can Brian become a top expert himself, if his martial technique can be popularized, it will have an immeasurable impact on the Lancelot Empire." Amis immediately added with a serious expression after Uhtred finished speaking. Uhtred was shocked when he heard these words. He asked in astonishment, "What's going on?" "It's like this." Candide, one of the three heavyweights of the Dark Mantle, began to explain in detail to Uhtred with a gloomy face. He narrated the details of Han Shuo's defeat of Leah Kane in detail. Candide then added, "Your Majesty, Brian has a clean background and is loyal and devoted to the Lancelot Empire. For such a person, it is worth it no matter what price your Majesty has to pay." Being able to become the king of the Lancelot Empire, Uhtred's knowledge and experience were naturally extraordinary. After Candide finished narrating Han Shuo's miracles, Uhtred's eyes shone with brilliance. After a moment of silence, Uhtred instructed, "Candide, I bestow the title of Count to Brian, a mansion in the northern part of the city, 10,000 gold coins, and a direct promotion from Dark Moon Emissary to Dark Sun Emissary. He has the right to investigate any information about the Dark Mantle. In addition, you will personally find Brian and let him choose an empty territory. For the time being, don't ask him about the martial technique. We must first let him feel our sincerity. Your Majesty is wise. I believe that Brian will definitely be endlessly grateful." Candide flattered. "Yes, Candide. This Brian was single-handedly promoted by you. Your contributions are also not small. I bestow you a medal of bravery as a reward." Uhtred said to Candide with a faint smile, "Many thanks, Your Majesty. Your subject is endlessly grateful." Candide was overjoyed and immediately kowtowed in gratitude. The Lancelot Empire's Medal of Bravery had a special meaning. Only those who had made outstanding contributions to the Lancelot Empire could receive a Medal of Bravery. With this Medal of Bravery, It meant that Candide would enjoy the privileges of the Lancelot Empire for life. Even if the current king passed away, any prince who succeeded the throne could not use force against the empire's meritorious subjects with the Medal of Bravery. In addition, the Medal of Bravery could be inherited. Even if Candide passed away, his immediate family members would similarly enjoy the privileges. Although the Medal of Bravery didn't have any real rights, this small medal was a proof of privilege. It was much more precious than an ordinary noble title. Therefore, even Candide was overjoyed when he heard that Uhtred had bestowed him the Medal of Bravery. He inwardly thought that this Brian was really his lucky star. Congratulations, Candide! Ames, one of the 3 heavyweights of the Dark Mantle, gracefully turned around and congratulated Candide. Many thanks. Candide replied with a smile. His face was filled with unconcealable joy. All right, this is what you deserve. Because of your discovery, the Lancelot Empire may obtain a Sacred Swordmaster or Sacred Magus. I hope that you can better guide Brian and make even more contributions to the Lancelot Empire. Uhtred looked at Candide with a smile and slowly said, Rest assured, Your Majesty, I will help Brian quickly adapt to the life of a noble in the Empire. This kid's perception is very high. Sooner or later, he will become a pillar of the Empire. Candide immediately guaranteed in his joy after receiving the Medal of Bravery. Nodding his head, Uhtred smiled and said, All right, you guys can withdraw first. I will warn the Church of Light that they will not be allowed to act presumptuously in our Lancelot Empire. I believe that the title of Count is only the beginning for that kid. I hope he won't disappoint me. Candide and Ames glanced at each other and didn't say anything else. They respectfully bowed and withdrew, directly returning to the Dark Mantle headquarters at MD Ordas behind the Imperial Palace through the secret tunnel. Candide would start preparing the matter of Han Shua's noble title. Chapter 290. In just a few days, Han Shua's name had spread throughout Asen City. Due to Han Shua's identity as an archmage necromancer, as well as his killing of Lia Kane, he had proven his strength. Uhtred used the excuse of him finding the blueprint to confer the title of Earl on Han Shua. There was a magnificent mansion in the north of the city, with guards, maids, servants, and housekeepers. There were more than 100 rooms of various sizes. This was directly bestowed upon Han Shua by Uhtred. Although the title of Earl hadn't been officially bestowed upon him, it still couldn't stop the admiration and deliberate befriending of Han Shua. From the day Han Shua left the garden house, this magnificent mansion had officially belonged to Han Shua. In the past few days, many high officials and nobles came to visit. Unfortunately, the housekeeper kept saying that the master hadn't moved in yet, so all the visitors could only leave their gifts behind. Han Shua, who was the center of attention, didn't know what was going on outside. After leaving the garden house, he flew alone to the mountain behind the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. He directly activated the transportation matrix at the entrance of the mountain and returned to the Cemetery of Death. After the battle with Lia Kane, Han Shua felt that he had benefited greatly. He slowly comprehended what he had learned from the battle, slowly recovering his magical yuan and mental strength. After spending an entire night's time, Han Shua's physical strength had reached its peak. He immersed himself in the bloodlust realm, his eyes bloodshot as he continuously circulated his magical yuan. Just like this, a few more days passed. Han Shua's crimson eyes gradually returned to normal. He lightly sighed, I'm only one step away. Unfortunately, this step is like a bottleneck. I can't break through. I really don't know what's going on. Han Shua could faintly feel that he was about to break through to the bloodlust realm. Unfortunately, no matter how hard Han Shua tried, he couldn't smoothly break through to this realm. Breaking through in demonic magic required opportunity and comprehension. Perhaps after 1 or 2 days of comprehension, Han Shua would be able to directly break through to the next realm. Once he grasped this one step, he would be able to immediately advance. Blindly wasting his energy on cultivation wasn't a good idea. When Han Shua felt that he couldn't rely on bitter cultivation to advance, he couldn't help but temporarily give up on practicing demonic magic. After thinking for a moment, Han Shuo took out the skeletal staff with 3 skulls of 3 different colors. Now, Han Shuo was certain that this skeletal staff was transformed from the Eye of Darkness. This was because the handle of the staff had the aura of the Eye of Darkness. When Han Shuo used the skeletal staff to gather mental strength to cast spells, he could successfully open the Cemetery of Death. Compared to the white bone staff he'd obtained from the Calamity Church, this skeletal staff appeared to be much more exquisite and ancient. The 3 different skulls seemed to contain 3 different kinds of power. When Han Shuo held the skeletal staff in his hand, he could faintly sense a little bit of it. Without a doubt, this skeletal staff was definitely a treasure that belonged to the Cemetery of Death. Holding the skeletal staff and shaking it, Han Shuo murmured, "Let's try this skeletal staff." Fallen undead warriors, answer the call of the Dark Emissary and reveal your existence. An ordinary skeletal summoning spell was chanted by Han Shuo as he waved the skeletal staff. His mental strength poured into the skeletal staff, and the 3 skulls on the staff suddenly lit up. Then, a row of 16 skeletal warriors appeared out of thin air. Han Shuo was greatly shocked as he looked at the 16 skeletal warriors that had appeared out of thin air. With Han Shuo's Grand Magus-level mental strength, he could only summon 8 skeletal warriors when he used the white bone staff to summon skeletal warriors. However, when he used the bone staff, he'd actually reached the highest level of summoning skeletal warriors, level 5. The number of skeletal warriors had directly doubled. "This is too miraculous," Han Shuo couldn't help but exclaim. Then he started chanting the Evil Knight summoning spell. When he finished chanting, 2 evil knights appeared out of thin air. Multiplied. Han Shuo was overjoyed. He then tried summoning the hate warriors and zombie warriors, but the results were the same. With the skeletal staff in hand, Han Shuo only needed to use the skeletal staff as a medium to chant spells, and the number of creatures he could summon doubled. After this experiment was successful, Han Shuo impatiently chanted another incantation, casting the Canopy of Necromancy and Acid Bog. In the end, Han Shuo discovered that both the Canopy of Necromancy and Acid Bog covered an area that was twice as wide as before. Good stuff, this really is good stuff. Caressing the skeletal staff, Han Shuo couldn't bear to part with it. He hadn't thought that this skeletal staff would be so miraculous. It could actually double the power of all necromancy magic, allowing Han Shuo's strength to increase once again. The skeletal staff had a peculiar appearance and seemed to be quite old. Apart from doubling the power of necromancy magic, Han Shuo faintly felt that there were other secrets hidden within the skeletal staff. Unfortunately, apart from using the skeletal staff to cast necromancy magic, Han Shuo couldn't find any other way to test it. A streak of white light flashed, and Emily's figure appeared in the transportation matrix at the center of the Cemetery of Death. Emily saw Han Shuo as soon as she appeared, and immediately said, "I knew you should be here." The transportation matrix that connected to this place was in a crevice in the Cemetery of Death. Normally, Han Shuo would travel to the Cemetery of Death from that secret location in the back mountains of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. Only Emily knew about this habit. Therefore, when Emily arrived there and saw the magic wands neatly arranged in the corner of the cemetery, she knew that Han Shuo was definitely in the Cemetery of Death. "Why have you come?" Han Shuo smiled when he saw Emily appear and immediately pulled Emily into his arms. "You should hurry back to Asen City. His Majesty the King has prepared the title of Count for you. Everything has been taken care of, and we're just waiting for you to return to Asen City to be conferred the title of Count for you. Who knew that you would disappear for several days, and even the Dark Mantle couldn't find any news about you. Lord Candide is burning with anxiety and asked me to help him find a way to contact you. I guess that you should be in the Cemetery of Death, and it looks like I've found the right person." Emily rolled her eyes at Han Shuo and explained. "So it's like that?" Han Shuo responded, then chuckled and asked, "Then, His Majesty the King is preparing to confer the title of Count on me?" "That's right. Apart from the title of Count, there's also a mansion in the northern part of the city, and 1,000 gold coins. In addition, Candide seems to have even asked about the matters of your territory, and is just waiting for you to take it over. Emily said. Very good. I didn't think that the battle with Leah Kane would give me such great benefits. Heh, it looks like the title of nobility isn't that hard to obtain after all. Han Shuo said with a smile, then stood in the transportation matrix with Emily. They activated the transportation matrix and directly returned to Asen City. Mount Ordas, Dark Mantle Headquarters. Stinking brat, why did you disappear for 10 days? Candide immediately scolded when he saw Han Shuo appear. I suffered some minor injuries after the battle with Leah Kane. I had no choice but to hide and recuperate. That's why I was a bit late. Han Shuo lied, then looked at Candide with a smile and congratulated him. Congratulations, Lord Candide. I heard that His Majesty the King awarded you a Medal of Bravery 2 days ago. Heh, congratulations. When Han Shuo said this, Candide's gloomy face also revealed a bit of a smile. However, Candide quickly recovered and said with a straight face, All right, let's not talk about this for now. Give me your Dark Mantle Iron Medallion. His Majesty has directly ordered you to advance to the rank of a Dark Sun Emissary. Your luck is really too good. Let's go. Come with me to see His Majesty. Let His Majesty award you a noble title and bestow you with the territory you deserve. Candide said this and brought Han Shuo directly to the Imperial Palace through the secret transportation matrix in the Dark Mantle headquarters. Not long after, King Uhtred summoned all the nobles of Asen City to see Han Shuo in the vast Imperial Palace of the Lancelot Empire. Uhtred, who was sitting sideways on the throne, looked at Han Shuo below and began to announce in a ceremonial manner, Brian, for repeatedly helping the Lancelot Empire defend against foreign enemies. I bestow upon you the title of Count, a mansion in the northern part of the city, and 10,000 gold coins. I hope that you will continue to work hard and make even greater contributions to the Empire. Many thanks to your Majesty. Han Shuo, who had long since been warned by Candide, sincerely expressed his thanks. Yes, the easternmost Bretel city of the Empire will be your territory. This Bretel city occupies an enormous area, but it's also full of chaos. I hope that under your leadership it will be restored to its rightful order. Uhtred raised his voice. When they heard that it was Bretel City, the nobles who were listening all revealed flabbergasted expressions, as if this Bretel City was very famous. Thank you, Your Majesty. I will definitely take a good look at Bretel City and restore it to the Empire's rightful order. Han Shuo replied respectfully. Alright, that's all for today. Everyone is dismissed. Uhtred looked at Han Shuo a few more times, then waved his hand to indicate that the court meeting was over. Everyone left one after another. Chapter 291. Bretel City was located in the easternmost part of the Lancelot Empire. It was next to 7 duchies that were constantly at war. None of the 7 duchies were as strong as the Lancelot Empire and were constantly at war all year round. However, once the Lancelot Empire attempted to invade the 7 duchies, the originally warring duchies would immediately unite and resist the Lancelot Empire's invasion. Individually, the 7 duchies couldn't contend against the Lancelot Empire. However, once the 7 duchies united, their strength would surpass the Lancelot Empire. Fortunately, the 7 duchies couldn't unite. Otherwise, if the Lancelot Empire really faced an attack from the 7 duchies, it would truly be somewhat difficult. Bretel City was one of the cities of the Lancelot Empire that was locked in a stalemate with the 7 duchies. Bretel City occupied an extremely large area. Unfortunately, because it was located in such a remote area, it was also affected by the war between the 7 duchies. There were all kinds of people mixed in the city. Brian, under normal circumstances, it's impossible for a count like you to possess such a large territory. Bretel City's area is about the same size as Valen City. Normally, only those with the title of Marquis have the qualifications to enjoy such a city. Bretel City is indeed a bit chaotic, but it's just right for a spirited young man like you to manage. Once you manage Bretel City well, it will be of great benefit to your future prospects. If you want to obtain the title of Marquis or Duke, it will depend on whether you can grasp the opportunity. Candide, one of the three heavyweights, looked at Han Shuo and explained in a deep voice in a secret room. Han Shuo, who was sitting opposite Candide and flipping through the information on Bretel City, nodded when he heard Candide's words. He put down the information in his hands and raised his head, saying, Bretel City is barren. The land can't be used to grow any crops, and only produces some special iron and silver ores. The 7 duchies are at war with each other all year round. Bandits and thieves run amok there. Even some duchies' regular armies can disguise themselves as bandits and loot the towns around Bretel City. Such a chaotic place with such a valiant people is indeed an interesting place. So, what do you think? The current Han Shuo was already a count. After killing Lia Kane in the garden house, Han Shuo's strength had been fully proven. Even Candide no longer treated Han Shuo with the attitude of a superior talking to a subordinate. It was as if he was treating Han Shuo as an equal. I don't have any plans for now. Wait until I get to Bretel City and see the situation. Han Shuo replied indifferently. That's good. Keep these documents well. They will prove your status as a lord of Bretel City. The former lord of Bretel City has been deposed due to his incompetence. The city lord's mansion of Bretel City is now yours. You can take over everything with these documents. Also, Bretel City has Bretel and Bretel City Army. Perhaps you aren't good at leading troops into battle, but I think Lawrence will communicate with you in this regard. You only need to protect Bretel City from being invaded by those duchies and bandits, and maintain order within the city. Candide said. Alright, then I'll leave first. If there's anything, I'll contact you through the magic mirror at the Dark Mantle stronghold in Bretel City. Han Shuo nodded and said this to Candide before leaving the Dark Mantle headquarters. In a mansion in the north of the city, Han Shuo strode in. A butler was already waiting in front of the door. Upon seeing Han Shuo walk in, he immediately said respectfully, Honorable Count, you have finally returned. My name is Kalas, and I am the butler of your mansion. Hello, Kos. Can you tell me more about the matters regarding the mansion? Han Shuo asked with a faint smile. Kalas was a white-haired old man. His clothes were not extravagant, but they were clean and tidy. His manner of speaking was refined and courteous. He should have been in this line of work for many years. After hearing Han Shuo's words, Kalas immediately said respectfully, Honorable Count, this mansion has belonged to you since you defeated Lia Kane. Everything is operating normally inside. In the past few days, a total of 35 Asan City nobles have come to visit you. We have received a total of 73 gifts, all of which have been properly stored away. As Kalas spoke in a soft voice, Han Shuo noted down all sorts of information regarding the mansion. From Kalas, Han Shuo learned that many nobles' territories weren't in Asan City. However, they would have a mansion in Asan City that was usually used to stay when meeting with His Majesty the King. Of course, there were also some nobles whose territories weren't flourishing enough. They didn't like to live in their own territories, so there were many nobles who lived directly in Asan City. In short, it was fine as long as they returned to their territories regularly to handle some matters and ensure that there wouldn't be any major disturbances within their territories. This mansion had been bestowed upon him by His Majesty the King. There were all sorts of maids, servants, and stewards within. Han Shuo had the right to dismiss them and had to pay them a certain amount of salary every month in order for them to maintain the normal operations of the mansion. Kalas had described some miscellaneous matters in great detail. Alright, Mr. Kalas, I understand all of this. Alright, bring me to the drawing room and invite Lawrence and Miss Phoebe over. I want to see the two of them. If anyone else asks, just tell them I'm not here. Through the Yin Demon's observation, Han Shuo had already discovered that there were many people who came to make friends with him in this mansion. These people were arranged in different rooms, so they couldn't know each other's movements. The Yin Demon that had been injured during the battle with Lia Kane had already recovered after being nourished by the blood essence in the cemetery of death. Although he had used up a few drops of blood essence, the Yin Demon was no longer in danger. Yes, Lord Count. Kalas responded and brought Han Shuo into a spacious drawing room before respectfully withdrawing. This drawing room was as big as a basketball court. 7 bright lights hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered with a soft carpet. There were many comfortable chairs placed around it, making it look very spacious and bright. After a while, Lawrence and Phoebe came over together. Lawrence laughed heartily and said to Han Shuo as soon as he entered, "Brian, congratulations. I heard that His Majesty the King was conferring a title on you today, so I found Phoebe and came over together. I thought that you would come back." After winning a large sum of gold coins, Phoebe appeared to be glowing. Her charming face was filled with a bright luster as she looked at Han Shuo with a fiery gaze and said, "Brian, Cameron is finished this time. The merchant alliance he formed suffered a huge loss because of him. His allies no longer trust him. The crisis facing our Buzzed Empire has been resolved." Seeing the two so happy, Han Shuo smiled and nodded, saying, "I plan to go to Bretel City. It's full of chaos and very interesting. If Bretel City can develop well in my hands, it will also be beneficial for you, Lawrence. I already knew that you would be in charge of Bretel City. Bretel City is indeed very chaotic. The personalities of the commoners are much tougher than those of Asen City. The armies and bandits of the Grand Duchies would occasionally loot some of the surrounding villages. For so many years, the city lord of Bretel City has been powerless. This caused the merchants of Bretel City to leave the city one by one. The nobles and commoners have lost confidence in Bretel City. I reckon that it won't be easy for you to quickly take control of the situation once you arrive in Bretel City," Lawrence said with a frown when he heard Han Shuo mention Bretel City's matters. The Lancelot Empire had sent out armies many times in an attempt to invade the 7 Grand Duchies through Bretel City. However, they returned in defeat time and time again, causing the Lancelot Empire to finally give up on this idea. After the armies had retreated, the remaining tens of thousands of Bretel City's city guards couldn't contend against any of the duchies. It had become a habit for those duchies to take the opportunity to loot Bretel City. However, although the 7 Grand Duchies had the strength to occupy Bretel City, they didn't do so due to their mutual misgivings and fear of provoking the Lancelot Empire. They only looted Bretel City from time to time, but never truly occupied the city. Therefore, the city lord of Bretel City was very sullen. Bretel City itself wasn't as strong as any of the Grand Duchies. Bretel City's land was barren, but it wasn't small. However, there wasn't much profit to be reaped from it. His Majesty the Empire also wasn't willing to spend a huge amount of manpower and resources to garrison Bretel City to resist the 7 Grand Duchies. In this way, Bretel City had become a tasteless existence, but a pity to abandon. It would be a pity to abandon it, but there wouldn't be any profit to be made if they didn't abandon it. Therefore, it was very awkward. Don't worry, I know what kind of place Bretel City is. I have my own plans. In any case, His Majesty has given me full authority to manage Bretel City. I will take good care of Bretel City. Han Shuo chuckled evilly as he answered in a mysterious and unfathomable manner. What do you plan to do? Lawrence asked after a blank stare. You will know when the time comes. I will make Bretel City even more chaotic. Han Shuo said with an evil smile. Chapter 292. Senior Brother Lawrence, I have some things I want to discuss with Brian alone. Phoebe glanced at Lawrence and said softly. Lawrence stared blankly for a moment before coming to his senses. He chuckled and said, All right, don't worry, Brian. Before you head to Bretel City, I will arrange for some generals who are good at fighting to go first. Nodding his head, Han Shuo smiled and said, Then many thanks. I really don't know much about some battle strategies. With the help of your people, I think they will definitely be of great help to me. All right, you guys chat, I'll be heading back first. After a while, I will personally go to Bretel City to visit you. Lawrence winked at Han Shuo and Phoebe, then walked out of the living room with a smile. After Lawrence left, Han Shuo immediately took a step forward and pulled Phoebe into his arms. After a series of lingering kisses, Han Shuo directly carried Phoebe and fiercely rushed into the bedroom. He forcefully flung Phoebe onto the spacious and soft bed, then Han Shuo pressed down on top of her. As their clothes flew off, The two naked bodies were entangled together. Phoebe's low moans were seductive as she desperately catered to Han Shua's thrusts. They were entangled until there wasn't a trace of strength left in them. After the violent storm subsided, Phoebe lazily leaned on Han Shua's wide chest. Her delicate fingers gently slid down Han Shua's body as she murmured in satisfaction, "I can't leave with you for the time being." Cameron's merchant union is facing the crisis of disintegration because of the huge losses from this bet. Our boozed merchant guild has made a huge profit this time. It's a good opportunity to clean up the mess and make it difficult for Cameron to escape this time. You should first deal with the matters of your merchant guild. Brettel's place is very chaotic. Wait for me to stabilize the situation first. Han Shua softly said as he gently caressed Phoebe's tender shoulders. Oh, right, there's some missing materials from last time. I've collected all of them for you during this period of time, so I'll give you these first. Phoebe suddenly remembered the list that Han Shua had given her last time. There were still a few rare materials missing. She exclaimed softly. As soon as he said this, Han Shua was pleasantly surprised and said, "That's great." The place of extreme water was in the Valley of Sunshine. Now that all the materials had been gathered, Han Shua could first plant the water elite zombie in the place of extreme water. After a while, he could directly harvest the earth elite zombie. Phoebe lazily rubbed her space ring and materials slowly appeared one by one. Han Shua conveniently put them into his space ring. When all of this was done, Phoebe took out a crystal card and handed it to Han Shua with a smile. I made a huge profit from this time's bet. There are 300,000 gold coins in this crystal card. You've just arrived in Brettel City, so you'll definitely need money. Take it first. Hee, so these 300,000 gold coins belong to you. I've also bet all the gold coins you've handed over to me before. You've made a huge profit, haven't you? The Boost Merchant Guild had taken out 700,000 gold coins to bet on Han Shua and Leah Kane. According to the odds of 1 to 5, the Boost Merchant Guild had won 3,500,000 gold coins from this bet. 355,000 gold coins was definitely a huge sum. Most large families would only have this much wealth accumulated over hundreds of years. Even the Boost Merchant Guild itself was only worth around 1,500,000 gold coins before this bet. But because of this grand bet, the Boost Merchant Guild's wealth had doubled. This also meant that the Boost Merchant Guild had officially become a major financial magnate in the Lancelot Empire. 300,000 gold coins wasn't even a tenth of the bet's total, but it was a huge fortune for Han Shua. Looking at Phoebe's charming face that was asking for a reward, Han Shua was ecstatic as he slapped Phoebe's perky but said with a laugh, "Not bad, the gold coins in your hands are indeed in the right hands." "Of course," Phoebe said proudly. 300,000 gold coins in Han Shua's hands was like a meat pie falling from the sky. In his joy, Han Shua ignored Phoebe's pleas and directly hugged Phoebe, pounding into her until Phoebe didn't even have the strength to speak. The next day, the slowly awakened Phoebe left Han Shua's mansion through the back door under Han Shua's escort. After Phoebe left, Han Shua returned to his bedroom and opened a cupboard. He used a key to fiddle around in the dark crevice, and a passageway automatically split open under the cupboard. Every noble's mansion usually had a secret room to store things or do some secret things that couldn't be known by others. This mansion bestowed by His Majesty was no exception. When Candide had met with Han Shua at the Dark Mantle headquarters, he'd already told Han Shua all the secrets of this mansion, including this underground secret room. Walking down the passageway, Han Shua saw a large, empty room. Apart from a few empty cupboards, there was nothing else inside. Placing the magic wand in one of the cupboards, Han Shua directly passed through the transportation matrix and arrived at the Cemetery of Death. The Cemetery of Death was gloomy all year round. Apart from the white bones that littered the ground, there were no signs of life or change. After leaving the Cemetery of Death, Han Shua let out a light breath and gazed into the depths of the dark forest, concentrating his senses. Why hasn't the fire elite zombie finished so late this time? Han Shua frowned and muttered to himself in confusion. The Earth Elite Zombie and Wood Elite Zombie definitely hadn't been unearthed for as long as the Fire Elite Zombie. If it wasn't for the fact that Han Shuo could sense the Fire Elite Zombie's prolonged aura, Han Shuo really would have thought that something had happened to him. Could it be because of the Fire Attribute Treasure, the Fire Lotus, or because the Lord of the Flames is there? Han Shuo pondered for a moment and guessed inwardly. Unlike the Earth Elite Zombie and Wood Elite Zombie, the place of extreme fire had nurtured the Fire Attribute Treasure, the Fire Lotus. Chu Kanglin's memories didn't describe what would happen if that happened. In addition, there was a terrifying Lord of the Flames there. What was even more peculiar was that the Lord of the Flames seemed to have treated the Fire Elite Zombie as his child. With so many strange things added together, the Fire Elite Zombie must have been affected. Otherwise, the Fire Elite Zombie wouldn't have taken so long to emerge. Forget it, I'll plant the Water Elite Zombie for now. Han Shuo didn't think too much about it. Since he could still sense the Fire Elite Zombie's aura, he knew that there shouldn't be any problems. Therefore, he decided to first go to the Valley of Sunshine and plant the Water Elite Zombie in the place of extreme water. It didn't take long for Han Shuo to fly from the dark forest to the Valley of Sunshine's sphere of influence. Han Shuo first arrived at the Soul Destroyer mercenary group and landed on that strange cliff. Strangely, Han Shuo didn't sense the aura of Dark Dragon Gilbert. He only saw Grant when he entered the cliff. When Grant saw Han Shuo arrive, he immediately bowed respectfully and explained, "Leader and Gilbert took on a mission and aren't here for the time being." "What's the situation like now?" Han Shuo and the three Yin demons circled around and discovered that the number of mercenaries here had increased by 200. These 200 people were all unfamiliar faces. Therefore, he understood that the Soul Destroyer mercenary band was in the process of expanding. What else could it be? The major powers have gone from fighting in the dark to fighting openly. They've been fighting fiercely during this period of time. Lorton's Cairo mercenary band is the most powerful. The other three parties have no choice but to band together and fight against the Cairo mercenary band. A few bandit powers occasionally participate. In any case, the Valley of Sunshine is in a mess now. Grant smiled as he explained to Han Shuo. "Right. After the previous incident, did the Rainbow Sickle mercenary band and the House of Menlo come looking for trouble with you?" Han Shuo recalled that he had killed Ferguson and heavily injured Adam Menlo. He couldn't help but ask in astonishment. "Haha, those two parties indeed hate our Soul Destroyer mercenary band. Unfortunately, they don't know where we are. Even if they want to take revenge, they don't know how." Grant seemed very pleased with himself as he laughed heartily. "I see that there are many new faces in the mercenary band. Will there be any problems with these people?" Han Shuo's heart moved as he asked. "Don't worry. The mercenaries we've chosen have all gone through strict checks. Those who can enter this area are all trustworthy. Haha, thanks to your help last time, Lorton has allowed us to recruit in the Valley of Sunshine. This has saved us a lot of effort." Grant looked gratefully at Han Shuo as he smiled. "All right, since Trunks and the others aren't here, I'll be leaving first." After inquiring about the information he needed to know, Han Shuo bid farewell to Grant and flew directly to the Valley of Sunshine. The members of the glorious Tanai Cairo mercenary band had already gotten to know Han Shuo. When they saw that Han Shuo was entering the valley, they didn't have to go through any formalities and even smiled at Han Shuo. Their attitude towards Han Shuo was very friendly. After Han Shuo entered the Valley of Sunshine, he headed straight for the shop. When he arrived at the Merchant Union, he activated the Great Formation without another word and descended into the well. He took out the materials from his space ring and sank to the bottom of the well. He summoned Little Skull at the bone-chilling bottom of the well. According to Han Shuo's instructions, Little Skull summoned an ordinary-looking zombie with the next summoning spell. Then, the Little Skull disappeared and Han Shuo pressed the zombie warrior into the center of the place of extreme water. He threw in all the strange materials and gathered all the water element energy in the place of extreme water towards the zombie warrior. Chapter 293. With the experience of refining the earth, wood, and fire elite zombies, Han Shuo didn't spend too much effort on the water elite zombie. When Han Shuo had finished and leapt out of the well, Han Shuo suddenly sensed two unfamiliar presences. The Shura Soul formation was still operating in the courtyard of the shop, and it was filled with a deathly aura. The Calamity Church's Dark Grand Magus Edwin and the female alchemist Belinda were pacing back and forth outside the formation, not daring to enter. They looked at the gloomy courtyard from the surrounding rooftops. The aura of death within the Shura Soul formation was thick, and the two of them couldn't clearly see what Han Shuo was doing inside. Han Shuo could clearly see the two experts of the Calamity Church when he walked out of the well and raised his head. Edwin and Belinda obviously knew that great danger lay below. Therefore, although they looked at the changes below with astonishment, they didn't dare take the risk of entering the formation. They appeared to be quite cautious. Han Shuo knew that Edwin and Belinda had already understood the dangers of this place when the experts of the Rainbow Sickle Mercenary Band had ambushed this place last time. It was only natural that they didn't dare approach this time. Han Shuo walked to the eye of the formation and sent a beam of dark light into it. The originally howling wind and deathly aura of death dissipated in an instant and the formation returned to its normal state. Han Shuo sat down on the chair in the middle and looked lazily at Edwin on the rooftop. He said faintly, "Mr. Edwin, it seems that you're always this sneaky every time you come. Is this how your Calamity Church does things?" Although the strange changes in the courtyard had disappeared, Edwin and Belinda didn't dare walk down. They chuckled and said, "Sorry, let's chat up here for a while. Congratulations on killing Ferguson, but you've also angered the Church of Light. They'll pay any price to deal with you this time. Heh, our Calamity Church sincerely invites you to join us. As long as you're willing to join us, we'll pay any price." "Sorry, I'm not interested." Han Shuo had rejected them last time, and now Han Shuo was still rejecting them without any room for discussion. "All right then. Since you're not willing to join our Calamity Church, can we discuss our cooperation? The Church of Light has already dispatched a small group of Temple Knights. Their goal should be to deal with you. Although there aren't many Temple Knights, they are all true experts. This is the Church of Light's sharp sword for eradicating heresy. They are on their way to Brettel City and are waiting for you. Even if you didn't come to the Valley of Sunshine this time, our people would have notified you when you arrived at Brettel City. I didn't think I'd be able to meet you here, so I'll tell you in advance. Let's see if there's any possibility of us cooperating." Edwin was very sincere, telling Han Shuo such an important piece of news first. Han Shuo couldn't help but frown when he heard Edwin's words. The headquarters of the Church of God of Light was located in the most powerful Odin Empire on the profound continent. There was also the Angela Empire between the Odin Empire and the Lancelot Empire. The Temple Knights had always protected the Church of God of Light. For them to dispatch a small group of Temple Knights just for Han Shuo, it seemed that the Church of Light had truly made up its mind. "I won't be cooperating with you for the time being, but I might contact you if I need anything." Han Shuo thought for a moment and said to Edwin. Edwin immediately chuckled when he heard Han Shuo's words. "Our Calamity Church and the Church of Light are mortal enemies on the profound continent. The enemies of the Church of Light are our friends. All right then, our Calamity Church might appear by your side when you run into trouble. We'll meet again then." Edwin and Belinda didn't linger after saying this. They looked at each other and cautiously left Han Shuo's roof, quickly disappearing from sight. Han Shuo immediately moved after Edwin and Belinda left. He released all three of his Een demons and had them follow behind Edwin and Belinda. He wanted to see why the two were staying in the Valley of Sunshine. Edwin and Belinda were extremely careful and made many turns along the way, on guard against enemies following them. However, their figures still couldn't hide under the surveillance of the three Een demons. In the end, Edwin and Belinda actually entered the headquarters of the Cairo mercenary band together. Because they were tailing them in secret this time, Han Shuo didn't openly enter the Cairo mercenary band. Instead, he hid in a place not far from Tanai and used the three Een demons to spy on Edwin's movements. Han Shuo had actually guessed that Edwin had hooked up with Loriton when Edwin and Belinda had snuck up on him. Otherwise, Edwin and Belinda wouldn't have been able to find him so quickly after Han Shuo had returned to the Valley of Sunshine for only a few hours. The Valley of Sunshine was the Cairo mercenary band's sphere of influence, and the Calamity Church's eyes weren't that wide. "Mr. Edwin, you went to see Brian?" Lorreton immediately asked when Edwin arrived. Nodding, Edwin thanked him with a smile. "Thank you for informing me, I just saw Brian." "All right, how are the preparations coming along?" "The 300 Death Guards of the Calamity Church will arrive in the Valley of Sunshine in the next 2 days. Anyone can get the Mithril mine, but we can't let the Church of Light take it. Otherwise, if they make Mithril armor out of it and equip the Templars, it'll bring us great trouble in the future." Lorreton's expression was cold as he said in a sinister voice, "Don't worry, as soon as your Death Guards arrive, I'll immediately mobilize the Cairo mercenary band and flatten the powers around the Mithril mine. Humph, I almost died there last time. I won't be so careless this time. The 3 great powers will pay with blood this time." "Hehe, that's for the best. If the Church of Light wants the Mithril mine, then we'll make them pay with their lives." Edwin had a sinister smile on his face as he discussed the details of the operation with Lorreton. Han Shuo listened for a while and memorized all the contents of their conversation. When Edwin and Belinda were about to leave, Han Shuo took the lead and silently left the Cairo mercenary band. After leaving the Cairo mercenary band, Han Shuo immediately left the Valley of Sunshine and returned to the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. He once again inquired about Trunks and the others' movements. From Grant, Han Shuo learned that Trunks and Gilbert would need some time before they could return. Han Shuo didn't stay in the Soul Destroyer mercenary band. He immediately flew back to the Cemetery of Death and returned to the secret room in his mansion. Not long after he walked out of the secret room, Steward Kalas respectfully said to Han Shuo, "My Lord Count, there's a young lady called Fanny who wishes to see you. She says that as long as you mention her name, you'll definitely see her." Han Shuo blanked and suddenly remembered his promise to Fanny. When he'd left last time, Han Shuo had said that he'd look for her within a few days. Who knew that he'd become so busy that he'd forgotten about this? Now, Fanny had actually come looking for him. "She's there, take me to her." Now that Han Shuo had his own mansion, if Fanny and Phoebe frequently came looking for him, the relationship between Han Shuo and them would be exposed sooner or later. Just thinking about this gave Han Shuo a headache. Seeing him so anxious, Steward Kalas was somewhat astonished. He immediately said respectfully, "My Lord Count, please come with me." After a while, Kalas brought Han Shuo to the room where Fanny was. He pointed inside and said, "Miss Fanny is inside. You can leave first. Don't let anyone come in," Han Shuo instructed. After Kalas left, Han Shuo braced himself and walked in. With a glance, he saw Fanny sitting in the center. This time, Fanny wasn't wearing a magic robe. Instead, she changed into a navy blue dress. When she saw Han Shuo walk in, she immediately snorted coldly and looked at Han Shuo with cold eyes. "My Lord Count, you finally have the time to come see us commoners? I'm sorry. Because of some matters, I was a bit late. It won't be like this in the future. Fanny, you must forgive me." Han Shuo smiled wryly. Apologizing as soon as he'd walked in meant that he was in the wrong. It was only natural that Fanny would be so angry. This isn't the first time. It seems that you've never fulfilled your promises. Fanny's face was still expressionless as she looked coldly at Han Shuo. Smiling wryly at Fanny, Han Shuo raised his hand and said, "I was wrong. You can punish me however you want. All right then, I'll forgive you as long as you promise me that you'll be an honorary teacher of the necromancy major." Fanny thought for a moment and glared fiercely at Han Shuo before speaking. Being an honorary teacher of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force was only a title in name and didn't need to be bound by the rules of the academy. They might only occasionally give a few lectures and answer questions when invited by the academy. The various majors of the Babylon Academy of Magic and Force competed with each other. Being able to find a few famed experts within the empire to be an honorary teacher was a measure of the strength of each major. "No problem," Han Shuo readily agreed. "You bastard, how could you kill that evil person Lia Kane? How did you become an archmage necromancer? Just how many other things have you lied to me about? Fanny was delighted when she saw Han Shuo agree, but then a series of questions erupted. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.